and welcome back to this special feature. It's wonderful to have the panel here to talk about diversity and inclusion and global mobility. So over to the panel to introduce themselves again.
So Tanya Maritini, so great to be here with you today. I am in New Mexico in the USA, and D&I and mobility is just such an important topic because mobility really helps lay the foundation of who your employee base is and also builds for future leaders. And you really want those employees to represent who you are as a company.
So hi everyone, I'm Lizzie Boddington. I am based in London, and diversity, inclusion and global mobility are super important at the moment, not just because they are really hot topics, both of them, but also because it makes sure that we have a completely fair and balanced workforce, something that I know employers are looking at, and something that provides great opportunities to people when looking for new roles, and it's very attractive.
So my name is Kristen Faison. I'm based in Hanover, Maryland, and I think to me, diversity and inclusion is of the utmost importance, mainly because I fall into the category of individuals that tend to be unrepresented as a Black female. And, you know, it's very much important to ensure that everyone has a voice and that voice can be heard in order for any, you know, organization or just simply in a general sense in life, in order for us to continue to learn and grow, it's important to take into account other voices, their experiences, and so on.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Susana Ramirez. I'm based out of Mexico City, and D&I is extremely important because it really allows for diversity in everything that we do. Global mobility allows for diversity of mindset, diversity of cultures, like diversity of people overall. So it impacts positively in everything that we do. It allows for growth in the company. So it's an extremely important topic that we should discuss.
So during this special session, we are going to review the questions that we received from our audience during the live show, and our panel are going to answer them for you. Lisa Johnson asked some really interesting questions around the way that mobility can positively affect diversity and inclusion within organizations.
So to positively affect D&I, I think one of the first things mobility can do is really understand the data. And what I mean by that is, who are you relocating? Who's on assignment? You know, what is the makeup from a diversity perspective? Because I always feel like if you don't know where you're starting from, then you really don't know where you're headed. And when you have that data, you can talk to customers, you can talk to leaders, you can inform the business. So I think one way to really be effective is to really understand what is your current population and then have some goal or some perspective on how to move that forward.
I would agree. I think another way in which we can positively affect D&I within an organization is partnering with the diversity and inclusion group, if you have one as a part of your organization, understanding what the company's goals are, what their team's goals are, and seeing how there can be synergies between mobility and DE&I and your organization, and how you all can come to a place where you're feeding into those goals and those initiatives as it pertains to the employee population that you're supporting.
I think as well, global mobility allows people to be going in countries that they wouldn't normally be going into, whether it's for short or long periods of time. And that means that with them, they bring a fresh perspective, which they can then help roll out into the organization once they're over there. So in effect, it's like diversity and inclusion is fueled by global mobility, and global mobility is fueled by diversity and inclusion.
I think that it's also important that you look into your policies, even go to as basic as review your verbatim. Are you really being diverse and inclusive when it comes to your policies? Who are you tackling? Who's your population? Yes, definitely get on with your diversity and inclusion groups, and that will allow you to be even more aligned to what the company is looking at. Diversity means many things for many different companies, and knowing exactly what it means for your specific company, for your specific group, will allow to better align and have policies that will enable that diversity and inclusion to continue to grow.
So now the panel are going to talk to us about the positive aspects of having a diverse global mobility team, which was raised by Preet Sethi.
Well, on diversity and inclusion in our specific teams and why it would be convenient or enabling to have a diverse team, well, it goes to two things. One, it allows you to give a local perspective, and it enables the team in understanding really what the local needs will be or are within the different business groups, but also it allows for diversity of mindset. I mean, we bring very different perspectives and different cultures onto the table. It only can grow immensely and expand exponentially on what is it that you can provide to the different businesses. It will also allow for you to really understand what the business needs are in the local mindset, and then globally enable. It will provide with a different perspective of, hey, my business in Latin America may not be the same business in the US or in EMEA, or even in Europe or Middle East or Asia Pacific. It really will enable to give a different perspective and ensure that whatever goals are in the local business are taken into consideration for the globally enabled policies.
Hard to follow what Susanna shared on this topic, but the only thing that I could add is that I really think that having a diverse global mobility function also brings so much empathy and compassion and perspective and understanding. And when you're dealing with employees and their families who are moving, I think it just brings a deeper appreciation for what they're going through and some of the challenges in those locations. So, which is, as we all know, invaluable.
Yeah, and I think it also, just to add on to that, Tanya, that it provides employees with the reassurance as well. I think, if they were to consider an assignment perhaps, and there wasn't such diversity in the team, maybe they would be a bit more hesitant. But in fact, I think it will help them make those decisions to see that that is already supported.
I couldn't agree with all of you anymore. I don't know if there's really much else to add. But, I think the only other thing I would say is just, having that a regionally structured model team, if it makes sense for your organization, dependent upon how your organization itself is structured. I think it truly is important to ensure that the mobility team is structured in that same way for the very reasons that, were outlined. And, I think oftentimes, I know I myself have worked for US-centric organizations, and there really is a downside to that if there isn't regional representation on the team, because, you don't know what you don't know. If I'm based in the US and this is my only experience, I don't know, some of those intricacies and the ins and outs that may be ongoing in EMEA or in APAC. And so having someone on the ground in those locations, I think, is of the utmost importance.
So next, we're going to discuss the importance of educating the business to avoid unconscious bias. So this was raised by Vinny Valverde.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, I think, educating business leaders to avoid unconscious bias. And I think unconscious bias is one of those topics that it's a bit like you don't know if you have it, you don't know what you don't know. So I think often highlighting that issue to the leaders to say, look, have you thought about X, Y, and Z is something that they may not have thought about previously, and therefore maybe are not making the correct or right or sensible decisions. So having that education is really, really important. I think also business leaders need to be aware and amenable to growing in their roles, no matter how long they've been there. The world is ever evolving and changing, and we've certainly seen that particularly in the last couple of years. And so it means that you have to be, as a leader, in touch with what's going on in this day and age and the ever evolving landscape.
I think that makes total sense, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think that as we continue to talk more about unconscious bias, this will continue to evolve in a way. I think that we are still very much in the early stages, I think, for the most part, in what is it that unconscious bias really means and how it impacts what we do on a daily basis. I can think of, for example, cultural training, and we typically give cultural training to whoever is moving. But we can go one step further and think of, hey, the team that is receiving is not really needing for that cultural training as well? Because yes, we want whoever we are moving to integrate to a new location, but what about us integrating then the team member that is coming in? So things like that can help in enabling leaders in talking more about unconscious bias and really figuring out what does that mean for them in their own groups and how they can tackle it.
I would agree. I think the other, piece to this, no different than a regular position that is advertised for an organization. When it comes to international assignments, the concept of having unconscious bias presence ultimately can play into who is selected for that role, who isn't even considered, who isn't even put on that list of potentials. And so ensuring that leaders are aware that we all have unconscious bias, like that is, we are humans and we have them, but it is of the utmost importance to ensure that we are aware. And how do we identify when those are coming out in the decisions that we're making, to ensure that we are truly being fair and ensuring that we're giving everyone a chance to have a seat at the table.
And I would just add, I think there's a great opportunity, as this group has talked about before, to really partner with your DE&I function, because there's a lot of different things that you can do. As Susanna was talking about, I mean, not just training for the team. A lot of us work on global teams and we may have biases we don't even know exist. I may not even ever get to meet you in person. And so I think there's so much that we can do and impact and influence. And I think we have an opportunity to bring that to the forefront with our DE&I counterparts.
So finally, we've asked the panel to share their top tips around diversity and inclusion in global mobility.
I think for me, what I've seen at least has helped me. I think the first time I even heard the phrase unconscious bias, I didn't fully understand what that meant, if I'm being completely honest. But one of the first times that I heard about it in a corporate setting, it was during a training, an annual training that all employees have to take. And the training itself is refreshed every year. So you're taking it on an annual basis, but there's new content that the organization that I was working for that would bring into it every year. And I think that for me, I feel like that helps to at least help people identify what unconscious bias really is, the examples in which it may come out in the workplace, and how you can work the unconscious biases that exist.
I think another way to look at it is not just around unconscious bias, but about life in general, is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And I think just even something that simple can really help you understand maybe that you're not looking at something through the right lens.
So one of the things that I have seen in addition to unconscious bias, it's called a microaggression. And if you're not familiar with what a microaggression, it's little things that people do and say that reinforce biases. And so it's not that they've done one really big thing, it's all these little things that like pick away at you. And so I would definitely, in addition to educating yourself on unconscious bias, like Kristen has talked about, look into microaggressions and see if you have any of those behaviors of just these little things that you just say or do or put in an email that you don't even realize you're doing.
Last but not least, I would say it's promote self-awareness. Try to really dig deep into what is your cultural background and what are your background, your baggage that you may have that you're bringing to the table. Be very self-aware of that and really dig deep into how that baggage or that background that you are bringing has provided you with some unconscious biases, and then talk about them openly with other people that may not have your similar backgrounds, that can really enable you in eliminating some of that.
So thank you to our amazing panel. It's been a wonderful experience to bring us all together again to learn and share about diversity and inclusion in global mobility. I've learned so much. I hope you all have too. But that's all we have time for today. So it's goodbye from me. And it's also goodbye from our amazing panel. Elizabeth Boddington, Tali Mariattini, Kristen Fison and Susanna Ramirez. See you next time. Goodbye.